Hello. It's Willow. Um, a lot on my mind. Um, Firstly, you might notice something different about me. I have my breast forms in, and they give me a lot of euphoria. It makes me feel more like myself. And I'm just like really excited that I gave them a chance. And I think a part of me has wanted to do this for a long time, but has been scared of like reactions from people. And so I'm really glad that I took this chance and I found something that brings me joy and makes me feel like more like myself. We're doing a landscape view today because my phone needs to charge because it will die if I do not. But I don't know what this is going to be about. Oh, it's pretty late right now. I want to keep this under like 30 minutes. Hopefully under 20. Let's see what time it is right now. Currently 2:48 in the morning. And I think, so the reason I pressed record today is because I have noticed that I've been scrolling a lot lately on my phone. Mostly on like either YouTube or Instagram or Reddit. It's like the main ones I use. I'm also noticing I am a bit dissociated as I'm going through this. So we might keep this short and sweet. But I did want to record at least something and get in the habit of whenever I feel like scrolling to press record instead. So that way, instead of consuming content, I'm creating content. Because one of my goals is to create more content, and I know I have a tendency to scroll, so it's like kind of like, why not kind of transform that and convert that? You know, it doesn't necessarily mean I have to create a video every time I have a desire to scroll. Like, I'm not going to force myself to if I don't want to, but it did feel aligned right now. Lots of things I could talk about, but yeah, I am noticing I'm yawning a lot. I am tired. I think I'm gonna go to bed soon. So maybe I can keep this below 10 minutes, hopefully. I am learning to navigate life as someone with bipolar disorder. I haven't been officially diagnosed yet, but I will be talking with my medicine provider about it on Tuesday and seeing if we can get me on like lithium or something. You know, I am kind of scared of lithium just because of the things I've heard about it, but I figure I can give it a try, even though I know the withdrawals are a bitch. So if I do end up not liking it, going off of it, I'll have to cope with that, and you know, that'll just be it. But I feel like I should at least give it a try. Because my mood is really unstable right now, and especially since I stopped smoking weed. Weed kind of, it depressed my nervous system and and even though it like induced kind of a depressive episode for me, it did keep me stable and it kept me from cycling. And I'm thinking that I have rapid cycling bipolar. And there's actually another subtype. It's not officially in the DSM-5, but it's called ultra rapid cycling bipolar. And there's even an ultra rapid cycling. And again, these are not like official diagnoses, but more like qualifiers that like your clinician might use to more accurately describe your symptoms, because you know bipolar can present so differently for people. And I'm keeping track of like when I feel manic and when I feel depressive. And for the past, so as I realized that a consequence, so like I said, smoking weed keeps me in a depressive episode, but it keeps me more stable. And then when I stop smoking weed, it induces a manic episode for me. And I found that out the hard way this time. I had a stressful PTSD trigger. I saw someone who had threatened me, and I moved away because of them. And I saw them right outside my rehab, and I got really triggered. I got really scared they were gonna like come attack me, and I got really anxious, and I just fell back on my coping mechanism, which was smoking weed. I think next time, if this were to happen again, I am going to be better prepared to not go to the weed, because unbeknownst to me, it triggered a 2-week-long manic episode, and that shit was not fun, I will say. And now I can, you know, I'm actually grateful for this experience, because it gave me a long-term consequence that I can reference. So like, for example, before this happened, I was like, oh, like, you know, like, yeah, if I smoke, it's not that big of a deal. Like, I'll just get back on track the next day. Well, now I know if I smoke, it's gonna take me at least 2 weeks to get back to a stable state of being. And so I'm really hoping that that will discourage me from relapsing again, and that I will consider the long-term consequences over the short-term benefits of like being numb for a night, you know? So yeah, I had that 2-week-long manic episode, and I finally felt like I was coming out of it, on Monday or Tuesday. I feel like Tuesday is when I finally like was like, okay, I'm out of it for sure. And then I started experiencing a depressive episode, which I don't know if it's technically would be a depressive episode, technically, because I think a depressive episode is defined in the DSM as lasting 2 weeks. And, you know, I don't know what tomorrow is gonna bring, if I'm gonna feel manic or depressive, but I was assuming that I was gonna be in, you know, this depressive episode for a couple weeks. And like my symptoms have been like oversleeping, like being tired all the time, like being extremely fatigued, being very agitated, and just like not having energy, and then just kind of like a dulled affect. You might notice that what I'm describing now is not how I am now, and it's because now I'm feeling manic again, which I will get there in the story. But basically, I will say the only thing that that made me think like, is this a depressive episode? is my sex drive has been extremely high, unusually high. It's been it's been pretty low for like a long time, and then like just like these past couple days it's been very high. And so that's the only thing that makes me question, like, is this a depressive episode? Because normally with depression you see a decrease in sex drive, but I also know that sometimes depression can manifest in like psychomotor agitation. I'm taking an abnormal psych class right now, so I'm like learning a lot. But so like I have a lot of lived experience like being in treatment for these disorders, and then also I'm getting to learn about it from a textbook perspective, so it's interesting to like supplement my a lot of the stuff that they say in the textbook I already know, because I'm like, bitch, I lived it, like I know. But it is interesting to supplement it, and also like to like know about symptoms that I personally may not be experiencing but other people may, and that are typical for the disorder. I didn't think I had bipolar until I learned about it in this class. And now that I know what it is, I'm like, oh shit, I have bipolar. And so I'm going to be discussing with my medicine provider if we can add this diagnosis to my chart, if that would be helpful, if she agrees with my assessment of my symptoms, and if we can get me on a mood stabilizer. I'm already on a mood stabilizer, but like a more powerful one, like lithium, because I'm just like really unstable right now. And so anyway, been in this depressive episode, been exhausted. Oh, also another symptom, can't focus. Another symptom, lack of pleasure in things that were fun, lack of energy. Like I was doing really good at like when I made my drinks in the morning, like washing out like the blender, washing all the things and then drying them, or putting them to dry. And I've noticed like in this depression, I just haven't had the energy to like clean up after myself as much. And I just feel like dead like the whole day. And specifically yesterday, like I've been sleeping a lot, like kind of like 12 hours, 10 to 12 hours, which I was sleeping like 6 to 8 when I was feeling manic. And I don't know what I was saying. Something about sleep. Lost my train of thought. I'm just gonna wait till it comes back to me. Or that I move on with the next thing. Also, just look at this cute little cat that my friend from my DBT group gave me. It's so fucking cute. And it like rattles. It's like a great fidget, and like it can stand up on its own. And then you can also put it down like this, where it's like, isn't that so fucking cute? And it can also lay on its side. Like, it's just the best thing ever. I'm so grateful that they thought of me and brought it for me. That was so sweet of them. But anyway, I've just like really been struggling, okay? And I remember what I was gonna say. So like specifically yesterday after my DBT group, like I had woken up, I'd slept a lot, and then I was just feeling like low energy. I went to my DBT group and I was just like going through it. Like I was just not here for it. Like I did my best, but I was like, I literally was sitting there like this. Because I find that touching my face like this whenever I'm overwhelmed, it really helps me. It really helps me to calm down. And I was just feeling really overwhelmed and like like I didn't want to be there. It's like a 2-hour group and it was like 15 minutes in and I was like, how the fuck am I gonna make it through this group? And I remember journaling and I basically made a deal with myself. I said, I am noticing that I'm still very tired and exhausted. I'm also very overstimulated. I just don't want to be here right now. I'm going to at least stay until the halfway point, though I might choose to dip afterwards if I'm still feeling shitty. So I stuck to my thing of staying halfway, and then I was like, I actually did feel a little better at the halfway point. I had calmed down and I was doing a little coloring. I'm coloring this mandala. This is my DBT folder. You know, it has all my DBT skills. This week we learned about I wasn't there for the lesson. I just took the homework home, but troubleshooting when what you are doing isn't working. So review, do I have the skills I need? Review what has already been tried. 2, do I know what I really want in this interaction? 3, are short-term goals getting in the way of long-term goals? 4, are my emotions getting in the way of using my skills? 5, are worries, assumptions, and myths getting in my way? 6, is the environment more powerful than my skills? It's interesting. Be non-defensive and check the facts. Interesting. So this is about self-validation and self-respect. Thank you for helping me look through this, because I would not be looking through this if I wasn't showing it to you. So maybe that's a way I can like hold myself accountable, is I can like, for my DBT skills, is also just, I can just explain them to you, and then that'll help me, because like teaching it to someone else really helps me. Okay. So anyway, I was gonna show you my mandala that I'm coloring. I really love coloring. I feel like I am really good at like matching colors. I don't really like drawing, or like, yeah, like I don't like drawing or like stuff where I have to create it myself. But if I already have it done for me and I can just color in the lines, like with my autism, I appreciate structure and rules. And so even though I have really deep-seated issues with authority as well, you know what, I wonder if I should like turn this into a podcast. Just because I think I'm going to. Okay, hold on. Let me get my mic and start recording this podcast really quick. Just my microphone. Okay, gonna plug her in right here. Move her to the side. Like that. Okay. You can see it's a little broken here. Like it has this told in, but it doesn't have this on the other side. But that's okay. She doesn't need to be perfect to be functional. Just like me, I don't need to be perfect to be functional. I love that. Thank you, Willow, for that. Okay. So now I'm gonna go into GarageBand and choose that. Okay, create. Okay, perfect. Hello, hello. Is it working? Hello, hello. Is it working? Hello, hello. I want to be able to like talk though, like without, I don't want to yell into it, and I don't want to like, I don't want to be like that. And I don't want it to be in front of me either. I want my face to be visible. I want it to the side. Okay, let me see. I might adjust the recording level. Let me see how this sounds. I don't want to yell into into it, and I don't want to like, I don't want to be like that. And I don't want it to be in front of me either. I want my face to be visible. I want it to the side. Okay, I'm gonna turn the recording level up a little bit, and let's just see how this is now. Like test, 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 test. See if that's a little better. That's the recording level. Let me see. Let's just see how this is now. Like test, 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 test. That's better. Test, 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 test. Okay, we got that. We're going to start the podcast. Hello, welcome to the podcast. I'm in the middle of recording just like a vlog, and then I thought, why not record my podcast as well at the same time, just for fun. You're kind of in the middle of the conversation, so some things might not make the most sense, but that's okay. Next time I will start the podcast before, so it makes sense. But for now, this is what you're stuck with, okay? But we were basically just talking about my experience with bipolar, and long story short, how I've been I was in a manic episode for 2 weeks after I stopped smoking weed, and then I finally got out of it a couple days ago and went into a depressive episode for several days, and now I'm feeling manic again. And so technically I don't know if I would describe it as a depressive episode, because I think in the DSM it has to be 2 weeks, if I'm remembering correctly. Let me just fact check this, because I don't want to be providing false information. So let's see here. How long does depressive episode have to last according to DSM 5TR? Says 2 weeks. Yeah, to be considered a major depressive episode, it must be 2 weeks. Let's see, what about for bipolar? And it has to be bipolar for 2 weeks too. Okay, so I guess I don't know if I thought it was gonna be a depressive episode, but with how short it lasted, I don't think it technically qualifies. But anyway, so the reason I was talking about my DBT group is because I was feeling really depressed, also really overstimulated, just exhausted, and really agitated and antsy, and I didn't want to be there, quite honestly. And so I decided to dip an hour early, and I took the bus home. Usually I have a ride to care through Oregon Medicaid, gives you a free ride to your appointment. And I had a ride set up that brought me there, and then I had a ride set up that would bring me back, but I would have had to wait an hour and a half potentially for the ride to get here. And sometimes they're late, and so I was not about to wait that long, so I just took the bus home. But anyway, when I got home, I crashed for 4 hours. I was like, let me just take a little nap, because I had 2 discussion board posts to do for my psych classes, and I don't fucking know why, but in my experience, these professors, at least at OSU, have this weird hill that they're gonna fucking die on about like not giving accommodations for discussion board posts. Like, they're really strict on like, you have to participate in the discussion board on time or your learning would be affected. Will my learning be affected, bitch? I don't fucking think so. I don't think so, honey. I'm gonna learn it just as good whether I respond a day or two late, okay? Yeah, the other people might not be able to respond to mine specifically because the deadline will already have passed. But is that really that big of a deal that you're gonna deny me an accommodation that would be helpful for my mental health? Okay, whatever. I'm so pissed about it. Like, I'm grateful for the accommodations I have. I have a flex plan that lets me get up to a 48-hour extension for small assignments and a 72-hour extension for large assignments. And I'm really grateful for that. But it just doesn't seem to apply to discussion boards. And I think that's really stupid, and ableist. And yeah, it's just really dumb in my opinion. And like, how are you gonna say that I don't want to get into it because I'm gonna get heated. But basically, long story short, I had to wake my ass up to do these discussion boards because they won't give me an extension for it, and I knew that. So anyway, I get home from DBT. You know, I had left at like 1:45, stayed to the group till 2:30 to 3:30. Got myself some Popeyes chicken sandwich, so fucking good. I also love their fries, and they have strawberry Fanta, and it was really good. It's just like my little treat for like bringing myself to DBT. Anyway, I went home and I get there and I'm like, oh my gosh, as soon as the first thing I'm gonna do is lay on this bed. I usually sleep without any clothes on because I sleep in my underwear, but nothing else because with my autism, I have a lot of sensory issues. And hold on, let me move this so it's a little more in front of me. With my autism, I have like a lot of sensory issues, and the like feeling of the fabric on my skin is really, I don't like it right in there. It's really overstimulating for me, and will keep me from sleeping. And also I sweat a lot in my sleep, especially because I have night terrors. Also, this video is gonna be longer than 30 minutes. Hello, mania. Sorry. I'm not sorry. I need to stop apologizing for things that I shouldn't apologize for. And you should too. If you apologize for things, stop apologizing. Unless like you actually like fucked up and like they need an apology, like, and you're trying to take accountability. But like, don't take accountability unless you actually need to take accountability. Because I had a situation with my professor where I ended up taking accountability for something I did not need to take accountability for. And I realized that a step that I was missing because like the theme of my life lately has been take accountability. Like, I've been trying to mend relationships and recognize where I've done wrong and commit to doing better in the future. And basically my professor like tried to call me out on something, and at the time I had been taking accountability for the last couple days, and so I was like, oh, another opportunity to take accountability, yeah, let's go. And I actually thanked her for the opportunity. However, I discussed this with a peer support advocate from the OSU student care team, as well as another professor, just to get her input on it. And they both agreed that this professor was out of bounds in what they were suggesting. Basically, I had asked for my accommodation, and they said that it was inappropriate for me to have asked for it because, in her opinion, it wasn't actually due to a disability-related concern. Rather, it was a mistake on my part. And first of all, bitch, it's my accommodations. I get to decide when I'm going to use it. That's not your job. You need to back up. You're overstepping, honey. Back up. And anyway, I've been chatting with another student, and turns out she was giving this student push back on her accommodations as well. And turns out this is a pattern from this professor of not wanting to accommodate students. And so, given this information and given that, I was like, oh, maybe it's just me. No, she's doing it to everyone. Like, I believe that this is a flagrant abuse of power, because as a professor, it's not her job to dictate when a student uses their accommodations. If she does have a concern that it's being used inappropriately, that's definitely, within her power to bring up. But I feel like it might be best brought up with my academic advisor, rather than with me directly, because there is a power dynamic, that I feel like she's not considering. And I feel like her opposition towards students, like she has a very oppositional attitude towards students requesting accommodations. And I feel like that is just fostering a unsafe environment where students don't feel comfortable asking for the accommodations that they're entitled to per the Office of Disability. Okay? And so, anyway, that's what I meant by don't take accountability when you actually shouldn't. Because what I realized, the step I was missing, is that I need to analyze what this person says and assess whether I agree with their assessment. And part of me was doing it because she's an authority figure and I wanted to appease her and like keep her in my good graces, like for a letter of recommendation. But now I'm wishing I didn't, because I'm not going to ask her for one anyway, like given how she feels about students with disabilities. I don't think she would probably write me a good one anyway, if she has those attitudes and those biases that she needs to unpack. Like, I would not be surprised if it was a passive aggressive recommendation, about this student. This student was successful in my course when they asked for many accommodations, or like, I don't know what the fuck she would say. But basically, anyway, when all is said and done, there is a need to think critically about the claims this person is bringing to you. And fortunately, it's been my experience that I do happen to agree with the people's assessment, when they come to me and they say, here was this behavior, here's how it impacted me, and it had a harmful impact. And I can definitely, say like, oh wow, like, yeah, that was my behavior. And even though I didn't intend it to harm you, it did have a harmful impact on you, and I need to take accountability for that. But it's another story when someone wants you to take accountability for something that's not actually your responsibility, and they just want you to like make them feel better. I think that's a completely different story. And in this case, after having unpacked this with 3 other people, 4 other people, 5 other people, all of them have agreed that this professor was acting inappropriately, because she basically said, like I said in the email, like, my symptoms, I was like, because I have been, basically I had to request an accommodation like a week earlier, like an extension, because of my manic episode. And I was still in the manic episode at the time. And I basically said, like, part of the reason that I didn't look ahead, like I said, I realized I didn't look ahead, but part of the reason I didn't look ahead was because I was still in a manic episode and I was busy catching up from last week. And I feel like you can't like separate the two, and she tried to separate the two, and she basically put in this like false dichotomy between something being actually, quote, actually disability related, and something being, quote, my own mistake that I need to accept the consequences for. First of all, the way she worded it as my mistake that I need to take the consequences for. First of all, it wasn't a mistake. Okay? It was an oversight. Yeah, I'll say it, but I'm not gonna say it's a mistake because that implies that I was wrong. And I don't feel like there's a need to put a right and a wrong, okay? That's very black and white thinking. Second of all, I literally said, I didn't have this. I didn't look ahead because I'm in a manic episode. And I did say, I did say my symptoms aren't as bad as they were at the beginning, but I'm still in a manic episode. And she took that to mean that like, oh, my symptoms aren't as bad, so I actually don't need an accommodation, which is not what I was trying to say at all. I was just, anyway, she basically said, like, this was your own mistake, and you need to accept the consequences for this, and not use your accommodation if it's not really a disability need. First of all, it's my accommodations. I am the expert on my own mental health, and so I will be making the determination on whether it's appropriate for me to ask for an accommodation in a certain situation. Your role as the professor is to comply with university guidelines and comply with the agreement that I have with the Office of Disability, which states that I get this accommodation. If there's like a genuine concern that I actually am like making it up and not, cool. If you wanna play that game, cool. First of all, bring it to my advisor. Don't bring it to me because there's a power differential. And like, it's not fair to bring it to me. And actually what the OSU student care team person said to me is if she continues to push back, to bring in the Office of Advocacy and get an advocate to step in and to mediate so that someone can hold her accountable. But anyway, I've been discussing it with a fellow student, and apparently this is not an isolated event. It's a pattern of like being really oppositional and providing a lot of pushback when students are trying to just use the accommodations that would give them more success, and that would support their mental health. And so, yeah, in this case, I wish I hadn't taken accountability, and I wish I had like stood a little firmer and been like, you know, like, thank you for your assessment. However, I disagree. And like I said, I still am in a manic episode, and so I think it is completely appropriate for me to be requesting an extension in this case. Like, it was clear that she didn't want to give an extension, and like, that's something that she needs to unpack. And quite honestly, I've been really disappointed in her, as she is a clinical psychologist. And she just seems to be displaying a complete lack of empathy for people with mental health struggles, and like viewing, it's almost like she views like getting accommodations as like cheating or like unfair because maybe she didn't get them. And it's like, I don't know. It just sounds like a lot of personal bias that she needs to unpack. But anyway, that was a rant. But basically, so I get home from my DBT and I crash. And so anyway, so the reason I'm saying that is because I get on so many tangents. So I knew I wasn't going to be able to request an accommodation, like a flexibility extension for the discussion board, because like, if they're like bitching about me actually like having a valid reason to request an accommodation, they're not going to give me one for one that's not within the plan, you know? So I was like, I need to wake up to do this. So I meant to sleep for 2 hours, like a 2-hour nap. And like I said, I usually sleep without clothes on. I didn't even take any of my clothes off. I just slept. That's how tired it was. And, ew, I just threw up in my mouth. Oh my God. Anyway, so I intend to sleep for 2 hours, and then so I don't fuck up my sleep schedule too much, and then wake up and then do this discussion board. And I ended up sleeping for 4 whole hours. And then eventually I woke up and did this discussion post, was up for 2 hours, and then I went to sleep for 14 hours. So like 4 hours, stayed up for 2 hours, went to sleep for 14 hours. That's 18 hours. It's giving depressive episode. Even though, you know what, I'm still gonna call it a depressive episode. Fuck the DSM. Like, I don't need to conform by their standards. Just because my depressive episode didn't last as long, they can make an exception, okay? So anyway, very depressive episode vibes, okay? And I slept 14 hours. I woke up still completely exhausted, very groggy, and also I'm in a PTSD episode as well as like this like bipolar shit. I've been having a lot of nightmares about my dad like abusing me, and for context, I have a good relationship with my dad now, or like we're building back for the first time in years, and it's really amazing. However, I took this as a sign, and I talked it over with my therapist that I was moving a little too fast in this relationship, because we were talking like every couple of days, and I noticed that like it was a really fast pace for my unconscious, because it was bringing up all these dreams and stuff. And part of like I have night terrors, and when I do have night terrors, I feel like completely exhausted. When I wake up, like I could barely open my eyes, barely keep them open, and like I felt drained for the rest of the day, like I hadn't even slept at all. So I was dealing with that PTSD episode on Tuesday, and then I'm dealing with another PTSD episode because of these bad girls, which have made me so happy. And I guess I should say, because you can't see me on the podcast, is I'm referring to my breast forms, my gender affirming garments that I just got this week. They made me really happy. They've given me a ton of gender euphoria, and like I have not had a desire to like take a photo of myself in like a long time. Like I do occasionally, like when I like do my hair nice, or like I just took a shower, or like I'm looking cute, sometimes I'll do it, but it's not as much. Ever since I've got these, I have wanted to take a picture of every single outfit that I've been in, because I love how it looks so much. Like it's like skyrocketed my self-esteem, and like it just feels great. And although it's had some really positive effects, it has also caused some negative effects as well. And I would characterize it as a PTSD episode, because basically, and this is a pattern that I've noticed pretty consistently, you know, especially when I make changes, is that my body and my nervous system are anticipating a negative response, and they're anticipating pushback. And anticipating people coming up and making out-of-pocket comments to me, related to this change. And I'd like to note that, this is a perfectly rational reaction that my nervous system is having, because it has been my lived experience that people have been very hostile towards me, that people have bullied me, that people have been very aggressive to me, especially when I am honest and authentic about who I am. It brings up a lot of opposition. And so my nervous system is just preparing us based on what we've experienced. And so I'd like to recognize that it's just doing its job. And I'm thankful for the preparation. However, it does get quite exhausting. And I am a system of dissociated parts. I don't quite meet the diagnostic criteria for dissociative identity disorder because I don't experience major or much amnesia at all in between my switches. For usually with typical DID, you have a lot of like amnesia in between when the parts switch, and especially like between daily tasks, and this amnesia is usually like disruptive to your functioning. Whereas for me, what I would classify myself as having is OSDD 1B, otherwise specified dissociative disorder 1B, where you still have parts, but you don't have like the amnesia and you don't have like the hard switches. For me, it's more of co-consciousness, where like I have parts that come in and maybe like they take over the headspace for a little bit, but they can't necessarily, or they don't often, not that they can't, but they can in extreme situations where we feel really unsafe, and another part may take over. And I have experienced episodes of amnesia when I've been very, very triggered. Though usually it's just the part coming forward, saying its piece, giving me a thought, giving me an emotion, and then retreating back. And that's co-consciousness. So like the driver of the show still remains the same, and it's kind of like this part comes into the passenger seat and maybe like they grab the steering wheel a little, but like the driver still has both hands on the steering wheel. They still have control of the gas and stuff like that. So I used to try to name my parts, but now I'm thinking it might be more helpful to me to like give them a role, like a name, like instead of a name, like give them a role. So I like asked this part, what's your name? And my old name used to be William, and for a lot of my parts, whenever I ask them their name, they just say William. And there's so many different Williams that like it's hard to keep track. So what I decided to name this part is the lawyer part. And the lawyer's job has been to come prepared to any potential conflict by imagining the arguments that are going to be made to me, so that I can properly imagine the counter arguments that I'm going to say to defend myself. And it can be really exhausting when this part fronts or sits in the passenger seat, because this part has a lot of anger with them, and I just get flooded by like anger. And I imagine, and it's because the situation we're imagining is unjust, and that's what anger's role is it lets us know when things aren't fair, and or when they're not just. And so I have this part come forward, and they say, okay, what if this person comes up to you and says this shit? What are you gonna say? And then I like have my clap back, and I literally will say the clap back out loud as if I'm there. And then after I say it, I realize, oh shit, I'm not there actually. but it feels real in the moment. And then I feel like angry, and then I'm like, okay, let me let this go. Let me redirect. And the lawyer part definitely comes forward a lot more whenever we are having a PTSD episode, whenever we are anticipating negative responses from people. And while I appreciate this part's desire to protect us by having us be prepared, like I said, it can be very, very exhausting to like I shit you not, like while I was making my coffee and my breakfast shake, I had this part come in 5 to 10 times with random scenarios of what people were going to say to me. And it's just exhausting. Like, I just want to focus on making my coffee, but I have this part coming in, like trying to protect us. And it's like, it's really exhausting. And so I'm in a multi-layered PTSD episode. There's like the layer of the nightmares from my dad. And then there's also the layer of like anticipating a negative response for these breast forms. And yeah, I just felt like completely exhausted today. And I realized that I'm going to have to request an extension for the test that I have this weekend. Even though I don't want to, I'm going to have to do it because I planned on getting this study guide done on Tuesday, but I had the first PTSD episode on Tuesday, and then yesterday, all I had energy to do was the discussion boards, and so I'm finally just now getting into making the study guide this Thursday, and I'm probably not gonna finish it till either Friday or Saturday, depending on my energy levels, and then that's just making the study guide. I have to actually study and put the time to study, so that's why I'm going to be asking for an extension, because it's a PTSD episode. And the reason I kind of went into that story with my professor is because I am anticipating pushback from her when I ask for this accommodation. I really hope that she doesn't give me pushback, because if she does, I'm going to have to contact the Office of Advocacy and get an advocate to intervene and kind of hold her accountable and mediate, and tell her that it's not really her job to be determining when I can use my accommodations or not. It's her job to give me the extension. So I was getting really triggered thinking about her potentially giving me pushback about using this accommodation, like her making some type of passive aggressive comment, or are you sure you're really in an episode, or I don't know what she's gonna say. But I had to go on a 2-mile walk to regulate myself, and I do not walk that far. Usually I walk half a mile at most, maybe a mile. I had to go on a whole 2-hour walk at midnight because I had so much energy from this situation in my head. And luckily I felt better when I got home, and I felt less triggered, and I felt more level-headed. But the walk seems to have triggered some mania to come back up again. And it wasn't just the walk. I noticed that I was getting really tired, and then I had a friend call me. Actually, I had 2 friends call me, and the first conversation we were talking about bipolar and mental health and just catching up after not having spoken in a while. And then the second conversation we were talking about, I was explaining my experience with feeling triggered about expecting pushback from people at my rehab, because there's a whole bunch of randos now that I don't know, and I'm just worried that one of them is going to say something really out of pocket to me and that I'm going to end up in a fight. and I really don't want to get in a fight. I can't go to jail. One of my worst fears. I really don't want to fight anyone. And anyway, I was telling her about that, and then we got into more of like her situation and something that's happening with her. And anyway, we just had a really refreshing conversation, and the conversation with my other friend was also very refreshing. And so yeah, so that's when I noticed like the mania starting to wake up. Like I had felt very depressive up until those conversations. Like I remember when I was scheduling the first conversation, I was like, hey, yeah, I'm like feeling really tired right now, but I'm definitely down to chat for a little bit. And like I was really tired when I picked up the phone, but as we continued talking, like it just like energized me, and I felt really energized. And then like my other friend called, and then I felt more energized. And then I was like, I have so much energy, let me go on this walk. And so I went on the walk, and then when I got back from the walk, now it's fucking 3:45 in the morning, and I'm recording a podcast because now I feel manic again. And oh my gosh, it's so fucking exhausting to be cycling this quickly between states. And I really hope that my medicine provider agrees with my assessment and is willing to like let me try lithium or something else, even to try to stabilize me, because it's like this is not it. It's not it. And yeah, I think I basically said everything that I wanted to say in this podcast. That was the point. I was talking about how I just now, like I thought I was gonna be in a depressive episode for a few weeks, and then now I just like switched to manic again, and I'm kind of like confused, honestly. And like I said, I've been smoking weed for the past 7 years, almost 8 years, and it really kept me like more in a depressive state, but at least I was stable and I wasn't bouncing around. And now that I'm sober, I'm 18 days now, actually officially 18 days because it's past 3 a.m. That's when my clock resets for the next day. 18 days, 2.5 weeks. Woo, go Willow. I'm really proud of myself. But now that I'm not using drugs, like there's nothing to keep my system like regulated and like stable, and so I'm kind of like just bouncing all over the place. And I looked it up, and there's rapid cycling bipolar, where the definition of that is where you have at least I think it said 4 changes in a month. Let me see. Rapid cycling bipolar DSM-5. Experience of at least 4 distinct episodes of mania, hypomania, or major depression within a 12-month period. Oh, within a 12-month period. Oh. Okay. But then there's ultra rapid cycling, where you have more than 4 episodes per month. And then you have mixed episodes, that is episodes that include symptoms of both mania and depression simultaneously. So right now, I'm thinking I have ultra rapid cycling, considering I've already had, it was like manic for 2 weeks, and then depressive for a couple days, and now I'm feeling manic again. Like I said, I don't know what's gonna happen tomorrow morning. I don't know if I'm still gonna feel manic. I don't know if I'm gonna feel depressive again. I really don't know. I don't know if I'll feel normal. I don't know what's gonna happen. And it's like really dysregulating, and like, oh my gosh, like whenever I got out of the manic episode, I was just so exhausted from all the energy that I spent in that time. Yeah. And I feel like that's why I was sleeping so much. So I was like catching up on sleep, and like I did so much in that manic episode. But yeah, I think that's what I wanted to address in this podcast. It was in this vlog, it was way longer than I thought it would be. I had a lot more to say. I went on some tangents, especially about my professor, but it's all relevant to what I'm experiencing. So I hope this was helpful to you if you watched it or listened. I hope that my experience might like give you some insight into your own. You know, that's part of a lot of the reason I share the story is just for myself, but another big reason I share is to help people learn and see if people can take away lessons, because I know that I take away lots of lessons from my experience. And it'd be cool if other people could as well as, you know, feeling seen and heard and understood by someone who's maybe going through something similar. So yeah, if you watched it, or listened to this, I sincerely thank you for sticking around. If you watched it to the end, you stuck around for a long time. Thank you for spending an hour of your life with me. That's very, it's very touching that you would spend your time that way. And I'm grateful to have you here. And yeah, with that, I think I am going to try to head to bed, considering it's 4 a.m. And yeah, I should probably head to bed. So, bye, I love you.